The Chocolate House. Once upon a time, a very poor woodcutter lives in a tiny cottage in the forest with his two children, Hansel and Gretel. His second wife often ill-treats the children. She always nags the woodcutter. There is not enough food in the house for us all. There are too many mouths to feed. We must get rid of the two brats, she declares. And she always tries to persuade her husband to abandon his children in the forest. Taken miles from home, so far that they can never find their way back. Maybe someone will find them and give them a home. The bad wife suggests. No, I will not do that. How can I leave my children alone in the forest? Says the woodcutter. All of us. Let's just abandon them and save ourselves. She says. The poor woodcutter doesn't know what to do. After many attempts, she finally convinces him and he accepts her proposal. The two little children are not able to fall asleep, they are very hungry. That night, they hear their parents' conversation. Now they know the plans of their wicked stepmother. Oh, it's over, the beast will eat us, says Gretel. Then Hansel comforts his sister saying, Don't worry, Gretel. If they leave us in the forest, we will find the way home, trust me. At midnight, Hansel wakes up. He slips out of the house secretly and he fills his pockets with little white pebbles, then he goes back to bed. He finds his sister awake and he says to her, Trust me, dear little sister, God will be with us. Go to sleep and don't worry about anything. Then the two children fall asleep. The next morning, the bad stepmother awakes the two children early before sunrise. She shouts, Stand up, lazy children. We will go to cut wood in the forest. She gives each one of them a piece of bread and shouts, This bread is for breakfast and lunch. Don't eat it all before lunch or you will have nothing to eat then. Hansel says to his sister quietly, Put the bread in your pockets because my pockets are full of pebbles. Then they all leave the house towards the forest. On their way, Hansel drops little white pebble here and there on the green ground. While walking, Hansel tries to remember any other trace that can him back home. His father notices that. He to him, Hey, Hansel. Watch your steps. And walk straight. Okay, Dad, I just think that our little cat is following us, Hansel replies. There's no cat, you crazy boy. Just walk straight, says his stepmother. Hansel continues dropping white pebbles on the ground secretly. And luckily no one notices him. When they reach the middle of the forest, the poor woodcutter says to his children, Now, children, go and pick up some wood. I will start a fire for you because it's very cold. Then Hansel and Gretel collect pieces of wood for the fire. When the father lights the fire, the stepmother says to the children, Now sit here beside the fire and warm your hands. We are going to cut wood. When we finish, we will come back to you. Hansel and Gretel sit beside the fire. And when it is lunch time, they eat their bread. The poor children wait all day for their parents to return. Suddenly, the two kids fall asleep. Night falls but the woodcutter and his wife are not back. Gretel begins to cry loudly. Hansel feels scared too, but he tries to hide his feelings. He wants to comfort his sister. Less than how can we get out of the forest, brother? Says Gretel. Don't cry, trust me. I swear I will take 60 home even if 59 father doesn't come back for us. Luckily the moon was full that night and Hansel waits till its cold light filter through the trees. Now give me your hand, he says. We will get home safely, you will see. The tiny white pebbles gleam in the moonlight, and the children find their way home. They creep through a half-open window, without wakening their parents. They feel cold and tired, but they are happy to be home again. They go to their bed and sleep. The next morning, the bad stepmother discovers that Hansel and Gretel return. She becomes very angry. She shows her anger in front of the children. Then she locks her bedroom door and she starts blaming her husband for failing to get rid of his children. The husband is happy to see his children again. Alas, the poor woodcutter is so weak that he can't disobey his cruel wife. The wicked stepmother keeps Hansel and Gretel in a room and she locks its door all day. She doesn't give them any food to eat. There is only a sip of water and some hard bread. All night, husband and wife quarrel, and when dawn comes, the woodcutter and his wife give the children small pieces of bread and lead them out into the forest again. The poor father is obliged to do that. Hansel, however, doesn't eat his bread, and as he walks through the trees, he leaves small bits of his bread behind him to mark the way. But the little boy doesn't know that the hungry birds that live in the forest will eat that bread. When the birds see him, they fly along behind and in no time at all, they eat all the crumbs. Now they reach the middle of the forest. With a lame excuse, the woodcutter and his wife leave his two children alone again. Stay here, children. Your father and I will go to cut wood. When you are tired you can sleep a little. We will be back in a while, says the bad stepmother. At noon, Gretel shares her bread with her brother because he scatters his bread along the way. Then they fall asleep. Evening passes and their parents are not back yet. Don't be afraid, sister. We will follow the bits of bread to go back home again. Just wait until the moon rises. Hansel whispers to Gretel to console her. But when the moon rises they can't see any crumbs on the ground, birds eat 'em all. I'm frightened, weeps Gretel. I'm cold and hungry and I want to go home. Don't be afraid. I'm here to look after you. Hansel tries to encourage his sister, but he is frightened too. He just doesn't want to show it. They walk for a long time. They try to find a trace, but in vain. Now they are so tired, they can't walk any longer. Then, the two kids hug each other for warmth and sleep at the foot of a large tree. At dawn, the two children start to wander about the forest again. They try to find a path to go back home. They walk for a very long time. Suddenly, they see a beautiful bird on a tree. The bird is white like snow, it sings very well. The children stop to listen to it, they love its singing. When the white bird flies, they follow it. The bird stops on the window of a strange small house, it's a chocolate house. The two siblings reach the small house after a while. Less than this is chocolate. A chocolate house, greater than says Hansel as he breaks a piece of chocolate from the wall. And this is ice cream, exclaims Gretel as she puts another piece of wall in her mouth. The children are so hungry, they break pieces of candy from the small house and eat them. They are so happy. Isn't this delicious? Said Gretel, with her mouth full. She never tastes anything so nice. Let's try a piece of the biscuit door, suggests Gretel. They touch the door and it quietly opens. Well, says an old woman, with a crafty look. Come in, don't be afraid of anything. Continues the old woman. She takes them both by the hand, they enter the cottage. She serves them a good meal. Unluckily for them, however, the sugar candy cottage belongs to an old witch. The candy cottage is just her trap to catch young children and eat them. The witch can't see clearly. But she has an instinct of smelling like beasts, you're nothing but skin and bones one. Then she locks Hansel into a cage saying, I will make you fat and eat you. The little boy screams loud but in vain. Then she turns to Gretel and says to her, for now you can do the housework. Then I will make a meal of you, too. Every morning, the old woman goes to Hansel and says, let me feel your finger. She wants to check if he is fat enough to be eaten. But brave Gretel brings a chicken bone to her brother and says, when the witch comes to touch your finger, let her touch this chicken bone, less than you're still much too thin. When will you become fat, greater than the witch complains whenever she touches the bone. One day the witch becomes so tired of waiting. Light the oven, she tells Gretel. Now she is hungry and impatient. A little later, she says, we're going to have a tasty roasted boy today. Now run and see if the oven is hot enough. After a while Gretel returns and says, I can't tell if it is hot enough or not. The witch becomes very angry, she screams at the little girl, useless child. All right, I will see for myself. Greater than but when the witch bends down to look inside the oven and check the heat, Gretel gives her a push. And she closes the oven door. The witch is burnt in the hot oven. Gretel runs to free her brother. They find a huge casket full of gold coins in the house. The witch is now burnt, says Hansel, so we will take this treasure with us. They fill a large basket with food and set off into the forest to search for the way home. This time, they are so lucky, after a few hours of walk, they meet their father. He comes towards them, weeping. Your stepmother is dead. Come home with me now, my dear children. I'm really sorry. The two children hug the woodcutter. Less than promise you will never ever desert us again," said Gretel, throwing her arms round her father's neck. Hansel opens the casket. "Look, father. We're rich now, you will never have to cut wood again." And they all live happily together.